And speaking of races and winners, politics has been a contact sport in Louisiana for decades. And many of our most colorful politicians come from Cajun country. Like Representative Emile Carrel. He would never vote for a tax, but always wanted to bring home the bacon to Evangeline Parish. He made a profound statement about Louisiana politics when he said, "My friend, let me tell you the first and most important rule of politics. Never ever let the cold, clammy hand of consistency rest upon your shoulder." Louisiana native James Carville, who was the lead strategist for President Bill Clinton, knows a thing or two about politics. I invited him to sit down for a chat about some of the state's greatest political legends. James, first of all, I want to thank you for dressing up for LPB.
You know, Jay, I never miss an opportunity to brand. I wore a direct shirt on Meet the Press.
We're in the secret tunnel room of the Heidelberg, the old Heidelberg Hotel. It's now the Hilton in Baton Rouge, where a tunnel leads to the King Hotel across the street. Huey Long used it for private purposes and to escape the press. Let's fast forward to Edwin Edwards, because he's the first Catholic governor elected in the 1900s. You talked about the Protestant governors that would have to carry the Catholic population, but here comes Edwin Edwards, totally different in messaging and in style and in personality than all of his predecessors.
Other than Bill Clinton, I've never been around a politician that had the innate skill that Edwin Edwards had.
His father came from Scottish origins. His mother's family was Bruyettes. They came from continental France. So they didn't come by way of Nova Scotia. And truthfully, Edwin Edwards was never Cajun.
Who built the Cajun Dome? Who paved the parking lot at the football stadium? Who's 4-lane in the highway to Abbeville?
But because she taught him French Cajun culture and language, and he could talk it fluently, then everybody assumed he was Cajun, and he just let you believe that.
He's in the jailhouse now.
Just as the pirate Jean Lafitte captured the imagination and admiration of New Orleans in the early 1800s, Edwards captured the hearts of Louisiana and maintained his electability throughout the last 3 decades of the 20th century.
Who was the greatest politician you've seen in Louisiana during your lifetime?
My lifetime, it would have to be every time I shave and look in the mirror, I see him.
The state was seemingly infatuated with the lovable rogue, despite the cloud of federal investigations and brazen womanizing that dogged him as both a congressman and a governor.
Many people in Louisiana consider me to be shady, dishonest, crooked, slick, what you have. And it's something that I'm prepared to live with, if for no other reason because my mother and I know it's not so. But she's probably the only other person who fully believes that.
A flamboyant populist champion, Edwards never shied away from his flashy lifestyle as a gambler and ladies' man.
So, so he became known as a Silver Zipper.
Edwards' quick wit and political savvy have proven unparalleled in Louisiana history. He gave us memorable quotes.
When he was running against David Treen, he said, "My opponent, Dave Treen, is so slow, it takes him an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. And I've just been asked by a reporter what they think my chances are of winning. And I told him I think it's pretty good because at this point, I could not be defeated unless I was caught in bed with either a dead girl or a live boy." What politician anywhere could get away with a line like that? Edwin Edwards.
Edwards did win that election with 62% of the vote. Equally as memorable was when he compared himself to his 1991 gubernatorial opponent, KKK Grand Wizard David Duke.
When some reporters asked, nobody's more diametrically opposed politically than you and David Duke. Is there any place conceivable where you two could be alike? And without even thinking, Edwards says, yes, as a matter of fact, there is. We are both wizards under the sheets.
And there was the subsequent Edwards-Duke runoff that prompted the state's most memorable bumper sticker ever. Vote for the crook. It's important.
Ladies and gentlemen, the governor of the state of Louisiana, Edwin W. Edwards.
Well, enough people did. Edwards won again in a landslide. When I first got elected to the state senate, a Republican from Baton Rouge, expected to be very conservative, I went and saw him. This was when he was elected for his final term, And he told me, he said, I know your district better than you know your district. And he was right. And he said, you're not going to be able to vote with me very much. But when you can, I hope you'll do so. And I hope you'll listen and help us where we can. And that's the way he treated his foes, or his perceived foes.
The idea that he would not like you because you were a Republican, that wouldn't, or you were black, or you were Jewish, or you were anything else, that didn't, he really was pretty much absent of any kind of prejudice of any.
A little more than a decade later, a Catholic Cajun lady married to a Spaniard was elected governor.
Today marks the first time that an honor such as this has been earned by a daughter, a wife, a mother, a grandmother.
Another one of Acadiana's most colorful political legends was a perennial candidate who was never elected. Still, he could have made the Hatchet Man Hall of Fame.
This is Warren J. Boogie Moti, number 66 on your voting machine.
His name was Warren J. Moti of New Iberia, but he was better known as Poogie. He ran numerous times for Congress, insurance commissioner, and the state Senate. He was usually in the race to attack a candidate on behalf of another candidate.
The triggermen are against me. Carlos Marcella is against me.
Although this was never admitted by any of the principals, but it became fairly obvious who benefited from Poogie's antics. You always knew who he was against, but you never knew what or who he was for.
Oh, wide up, Charlie Fuselier, Sheriff of St. Martin Parish, is against me. The co-chief of Iberia Parish, G. Jerry Watney, is against me.
I'm in downtown Winfield, Louisiana at the Louisiana Political Museum and Hall of Fame. Let's check it out. Another one-of-a-kind Cajun politician was Daley Joseph Cat Doucette, who served off and on from the 1930s to the 1960s as sheriff of St. Landry Parish. He couldn't speak English fluently until he was 19 years old, but he spoke perfect Cajun French. He hired someone to help him with his pronunciation and diction when he decided to run for office. I'm not sure it worked. In one of the re-election campaigns, he pounded on a podium and said, "Me, I'm gonna win this race. I'm gonna win by landscape." He said, my opponent over there, he got all kind of things wrote down and he read them to you. Me, when I talk out of my head. One time, the press asked the sheriff, what do you think about juvenile delinquency? He thought for a moment and said, well, I don't know too much about it, but if it's good for the kids, I'm for it. And then he was asked what he thought about the Civil Rights Bill. He said, well, if we owe it, we ought to pay it. There are political posters and memorabilia everywhere, even in here. You can wait here. Well, some 30 miles south of St. Landry Parish, approximately 10% of the population still speak French. Of course, that's down in Lafayette, the unofficial capital of Cajun country. With a 65% Catholic population, Lafayette Parish has the distinction of having the highest number of Catholics of any parish or county in America. Lafayette is one of 21 cities in the country named for the Marquis de Lafayette, an aristocrat who became a general in the Revolutionary War at age 19. He counted George Washington among his closest friends. He was one of 3 European transplants with Louisiana connections who had a profound impact on America's victory in the Revolutionary War. The second was the Spanish governor, Bernardo de Galvez, who led victories over the British in Mobile, Natchez, and Baton Rouge, the only battles outside the 13 colonies. The third was an Irishman, Oliver Pollock, a wealthy New Orleanian who contributed today's equivalent of $1 billion to the war effort. He was also responsible for creating the dollar sign. With poor penmanship, writing the debt as pesos The P and S ran together, resulting in the modern-day symbol of money. Lafayette Parish is also home to one of the most unusual characters in Louisiana history, Dudley J. LeBlanc.
If you had to tell me the most interesting person of that era in Louisiana politics was Cousin Dudley J. LeBlanc. He always supported Protestant governors because he knew he could get anything that he wanted.
And those Protestant governors needed his support to carry South Louisiana.
They didn't need to carry. They needed to get 40%. I mean, they'd get 80 and everything north of Bunkie.
He was a native of Youngsville, outside of Lafayette. He represented Southwest Louisiana for one term in the House of Representatives, beginning in 1924, and then served 4 terms in the state Senate from 1940 to 1964, interrupted twice by unsuccessful runs for governor. Dudley made a profound impact on Louisiana in 3 distinct ways. First, politically. He literally served in elected office from the 1920s to the 1960s.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the news of the
Every
week is
Sunday from 12 to 12:30, Dudley J. LeBlanc had the news in French. And people would stop and turn the radio on, quit eating lunch to listen to Cousin Doug. He gave the news in French, but a lot of times it was interjected with politics.
Secondly, Dudley was proud of his Acadian heritage and was a champion of the French language in Louisiana. This is hard to believe, but it was against the law to speak French in the public schools of Louisiana until late in the 20th century.
Because he elected John McKithen governor, McKithen returned the favor by creating the state agency, CODEFIL, Council for Development of French in Louisiana. And so he was very close to McKithen. And he knew he was going to France for a big Acadian reunion. And he asked McKithen to get him a meeting with Pope Pius XII in Rome. And so here's a photograph of Dudley LeBlanc greeting Pope Pius XII. And shortly after this was taken in 1996, Dudley pulled out a rosary and asked the Pope to bless it. So he has a picture of the Pope consecrating Dudley's rosary. As soon as Dudley got back to Louisiana, he bought 3 cartons of rosaries, and he spent the next 2 years telling women, look, I'm going to give you this rosary. It was blessed by the Pope.
But thirdly, and most importantly, Dudley made his mark as an entrepreneur.